Hey folks, David Stewart here. Coming back from a long holiday, and I wanted to get back into the swing of things by asking you all a question and seeing what your responses are, particularly if you are a longtime fan of comics. How big of a problem do you think the monogenre is for the comic book industry? The monogenre being superheroes. I ask this question because I think it's a good opportunity to take a step back from what's going on with Comicsgate, which tends to be a lot of creators and fans and outsiders and culture warriors clashing over, the forced social messages within comic books and the treatment of established characters within, comic book canon, and look back and say, well, is the genre creating problems within the industry itself? This dominance of the superhero genre. And as far as my understanding is, it's incredibly dominant. I've never walked into a comic book store and not seen just wall-to-wall superhero comics. Occasionally you see other stuff in there as well, right? You see, usually nowadays it's an adaptation of a previously established IP. It's like a Star Wars comic or, an Alien comic. But definitely in terms of collectors, all I ever see from the past, the vintage comics, the collectible comics, are superheroes. I don't see anyone collecting Alien versus Predator comics from Dark Horse in the 90s or something like that. It's pretty much just Marvel and DC and a couple of other companies, but usually Marvel and DC past superhero comics. So the dominance of this genre, I wonder, is it causing some of the problems in the comic book industry? And if it is, let me know how and why and whether you think it is. Because if I look at Japan, if we look at Japan, for example, they have a manga. Manga has a huge number of genres. There's like yaoi light novels. There's pornographic stuff. There's action stuff. There's stuff like Berserk, which would be like a medieval fantasy style of manga, I guess. So they have a lot of different genres. And their industry seems to be doing pretty well with it. And the way that they sell manga is very different from the way that comic books get sold in the United States. So there's a little bit different distribution there. But here we tend to be really dominated by the superhero genre. Even the outsiders who are part of this conflict, if somebody's going outside the industry and self-funding their comic, like Cyberfrog or Jawbreakers, they're still in the superhero genre. Even something like Alt Hero, which was one of the first ones I remember doing this, which is very unfortunately named, and I think they picked the name before alt-right was poisoned and destroyed as a term of identity. So Vox Day is unfortunately named Alt Hero. It's still within the superhero genre, and I don't see a lot of people making big waves stepping outside of that genre. It's mostly a lot of interaction within the superhero genre. So the question is it a problem? And in what ways could it be a problem? And so one of the problems I pointed out in another video is that cycle of corporate IP ownership. Like, this is a 30th anniversary Spider-Man comic. This thing is from way back in 1992. Okay, so this is a 26-year-old comic. I got it like when I was a kid 26 years ago. It's 56 years of Spider-Man. They're still making Spider-Man comics. Is that a problem? And what problems does it cause? Because I think it does cause some issues, and I think Comicsgate is partly about these long-running characters and the way that they're treated and what ends up happening with those characters. So, and do you see a problem with the interaction of collectors and comic book shops with genres and what's possible to grow the business? Because I don't know how much you grow the business with one genre without like diversifying the genres. And at the same time, here's another question. You have this dominant superhero genre. Why aren't more people buying the books? Because you have really, really successful Marvel movies. Are people coming into the shops and buying the Marvel books? Are they buying them off Amazon to see, what the relationship is there? Because when Harry Potter movies came out, people started buying Harry Potter books. When Lord of the Rings came out, people went back and bought Lord of the Rings books and read the books to get like an extra take on what was there if they really liked it. So why isn't that happening with superheroes? It seems like the industry is having a lot of problems selling a lot of comics. And I'm just wondering what all that's about and what's your take on it. Is it a problem with the genre, or is it purely a problem with the execution going on with the genre? So let me know your thoughts down below. Those are some of the things that I think about with this, and some of the directions that I'm thinking in with, how big of a problem is this? Because the industry wasn't always just superhero comics. If you go far enough back, there was a lot more horror comics. They made up a bigger portion of it. There was pulp comics. Of course, even, in the last couple decades, you've still had Elric comics, you've still had Conan comics and things like that don't fit that superhero genre very neatly. They're more fantasy oriented. So anyway, I don't want to say that everything's a superhero, but certainly right now it seems really dominant in the minds of the fans, and it seems really dominant in the industry. So just give me your thoughts. Let me know what you think about it. Are you thinking outside of the box that I'm thinking in? And I'll take it into account. I'm trying to formulate some thoughts on the industry as a whole, and some of the issues that I see with it, and some of the impediments that I see for artists, because I know there's a lot of comic artists, a lot of graphic novel artists that watch my channel for the story content, and I want to have a better understanding of the industry, because I don't, it's not that I don't read comics, I read them less probably than somebody who's super into them, but I don't draw comics, so I'm not in the comic industry to tell you firsthand what's going on. I'm kind of looking at it from a outside analytical perspective, and I wouldn't know how to change them on a genre, because I don't draw comics. I'd have to team up with an artist to draw something outside of the box, and then it might not be successful because you tend to just kind of go with what is already established there. Anyway, just some thoughts. Leave me your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all next time.